when you look at what is going on in our history, when you look at what's going on in the Bible, we are, as the Adamites and the surviving Noahites, we are the resolution to the angelic rebellion. And so when Jesus comes and he's solemn about things, he knows what is at stake, not for him, even though he's going to have to do something that is absolutely unimaginable to do, to sacrifice himself and to, humble himself and all of the things that went with it. But the solemnity of it is that this is an optimistic perspective in terms of people who are going to accept good and accept God and accept Jesus for eternity. But the solemnity part of it is those who don't, and those who at the judgment who will be judged and will be judged by what was in their heart, even if they didn't know what Jesus said, as the book of Romans talks about. Many of those, and probably most of those, I mean, I'll leave judgment up for God. He can save anybody he wants because he's the omnipotent and the Alpha Omega. I'll leave that up to him, but it's very difficult to get to heaven that sort of way. And so you have this thing that is playing out. So he's there to do the atonement and to be sort of to start the denouement to things that are allowed to happen through free choice. So the angels had free choice. They had intimate knowledge. They were already immortal. Many chose to rebel. And up to a third, as Revelation 12 will say, and there could be 100 million, 10,000 times 10,000, as Daniel in Revelation talks about. And that could be an allegorical number, because in other passages it says they're countless. They're like the sands. There could be a larger number, but even if it's 100 million, depending on whether or not you want to use 50 million as 50 over top of the 100 or 33 million, that's a lot of fallen angels, the visible and the invisible ones, whom they are that we fight against. And so it's important to understand that the fallen angels, the gods, those who are moving the strings of secularism and polytheism, because they're the same belief system, the same philosophy, the love of Sophia, the love of wisdom. So it comes out of Greek. It's their theology. They did not anticipate the resurrection, as First Corinthians talks about. Otherwise, the princes of this world, the invisible ones, not the visible ones, as you take that back to Greek, they did not know about the resurrection. Otherwise, as it says, they wouldn't have permitted Jesus to be crucified. But they wanted Jesus to die in this world because it was their understanding. And you kind of see that sort of the allegory in the Matrix, that if you die in the Matrix, you die. And so there might be something to that in their belief in terms of how they excuse away the gods, as let's say the parent gods who came up and slew the parent gods to take over. So what I mean by that is Zeus and his Olympian gods, they overthrow the parent gods of Kronos and Gaia. But gods can't die. It's interesting, though, that all of this is sort of understood if you know the book from the front to the back of the Bible, of the solemnic nature that Jesus came here about and what he had to do and how difficult that would have been. There could be more that are falling as they go, because again, it's all about free choice. So they could choose to rebel, even though they would know a lot of the consequences. But also the angels knew that created the giants, knew the solemnity of their oath that they took on Mount Hermon, as the book of Enoch explains it, that they were going to carry that out to the end, no matter the consequences. The Harum Anathema, as it was originally known, and both of those are Hebrew words that comes out of the Old Testament in Hebrew in terms of how that gets put together. And it's why oaths are sort of restricted. I mean, we're told not to do it. We can do it, but if you swear an oath, you will be held accountable for. Those angels were going to be held accountable. So would we if we take an oath. So we want to be very, very careful of the oaths. And this is a world that's an oath-based system, because that's sort of part of that theology that we were talking about. So these angels could still be rebelling, and not all of them are in the abyss. Only the worst of the angels, those who created the giants, are in the abyss. And so we have giants that are created before the flood, with the Nephilim. Nephilim only shows up 3 times in the Old Testament, in Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33 twice, where it says the Anakim. And when I'm referring to giants, I'll use the I am plural, like in Nephilim or Seraphim, cherubim. It's plural, and it's the male plural. It means one. So like the seraphim would be the serpent ones. For example, the Nephilim are the terrible giant ones. And so the Anakim, or Anak as they're described, and the Anakites as they're described in most English translations, are described as giants in the evil embellished part of the report. And there weren't Nephilim after the flood. But when we look at Deuteronomy 2, when it talks about the Anakim and the Horim and the Avim and the Zamzuzim and the Emim, and it talks about these giants, and the word giant goes back to the Hebrew word Repha, Rapha, and that's 7497. There's 3 or 4 different Raphas. They're all similarly and related in the meaning, and that's a giant tribe. So you have Rephaim that show up after the flood. So in Genesis 14 and 15, you actually get the word Rephaim as a tribe in Genesis 14, which is the war against giants, the war of giants of Mesopotamia warring against the giants of the Covenant Land region. And you have also the Rephaim that are going to show up in Genesis 15 is what I would call the mighty 10 versus the mighty 7. You have the mighty 7 listed in there as well, but you have the triple K, if I could put it that up, the KKK of the ancient world. Connections there too, but that's another rabbit hole. The Rephaim are listed as one of those nations that are occupying the covenant land. So Rephaim shows up as Rapha as the singular, Rephaim as the plural. It shows up 25 times in the Hebrew lexicon of the Old Testament. So way more than the Nephilim. So you have a different kind of giant, it seems, after the flood. So we're not told how giants show up after the flood. That we don't have a smoking gun verse as we do in 6:4 in Genesis, but we do get told that the sons of God went to human females again, and that could be before the flood or it could be after. What we do know, though, is we have many giant names that show up after the flood, and I just listed a few, but there's many, many more, and I cover all of those off and take them back to specific patriarchs of those tribes.